everyone. Can you all hear me? Great. I thank you all so much. Raise this up a little bit. Thank you all so much for being here. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Michael. I am Katherine's husband and biggest fan. I've been obviously following her career since the beginning. Really enjoyed her first series, the Campus Chronicles, but I love the Prestons, and we're here today to celebrate the end of her Preston series. So a little bit about the Prestons, why this book series has been meaningful to me personally. So if you're not familiar with books, the Prestons are a fictional family of nobles in Regency England who made the decision to boycott the slave trade by not purchasing any imported goods, not having any imported goods on their estate. And they also do these revolutionary things like treating all the workers fairly on their estate and making everyone involved. It's been really inspiring to me with everything that's going on to have this example of activism. These books have been great to read. I'm currently rereading the series. Can't wait to read the newest book and final book, The Wither Without a Will. I'm gonna bring Katherine up to the stage. But first, I want to read off some awards that she's won. Her book's very critically acclaimed. She has been recognized by the Forward Indies Book of the Year Awards, Next Generation Indie Book Awards, the National Indie Excellence Awards, the Romance Slam Jam Diverse Book Awards, and the Shelf Unbound Indie Book Awards. Without further ado, please give a warm round of applause for Katherine Grant.
Thank you. I don't really know how to use a microphone. Okay, there we go. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you to Michael. It's impossible for me to put into words how much he supports me in so many ways, but I know I would not have this career if not for him. So thank you, Michael. Thank you, Joy and the team at the local for opening up this space for the book launch party. The local offers this space to the community for free. And so it's a really great community resource, and I so appreciate them inviting us to celebrate here today. My heart is so very full. Yes. Yay! My heart is very, very full today to celebrate so many things. First of all, the book launch, The Widower Without a Will. Like Michael said, it's the final installment in the Prestons, and I have been working on the Prestons for the past 4 years. It's also the 20th title that I have published. So thank you. It's quite the milestone, and it's a very meaningful project to me that's coming to a close. But even more than that, today I am celebrating creativity. I remember in the years leading up to when I decided to publish my books, I was so inspired, and I continue to be so inspired by people in New York City that I see putting their art out there. There are friends of ours who just hire venues, rehearse, and put on music shows because they love music. I'm thinking of off-Broadway shows where friends who are such theatrical visionaries put together shows, and I go and I'm like, I didn't really get that, but I love your vision. Craft fairs where people are doing really amazing handmade artwork and sharing it with the world. We also have Arlie here from Sunnyside Ballet Studio, who does an amazing music video camp every summer that she connects kids with local artists, and they put together a music video, and it's such a celebration of creativity and collaboration. And I could just go on and on about all the different types of arts that I see and how it inspires me and how I really just wanted to be a part of it. And so I'm so glad to celebrate today because I feel a part of it. So in addition to my books today, there are lots of different ways to participate in art. There's this amazing visual art exhibit. It's curated by Jax. It's called Woo the Music, and this is all original art that the local has put up as an exhibition. You've heard a little preview, and we're going to hear more live music from Grand Picnic. And we're going to have dancing from Arlie R., Trey Shades, and two-time Emmy nominee Classic Corella. And I would also love to celebrate your creativity. I know there are a lot of creative people in this room. So I have a whiteboard. If you haven't seen it yet, please share what your creative projects are. And if you're someone who just likes to consume creative projects, check out the whiteboard before you go because there's a lot of cool stuff going on just in this crowd here. All right, so I'm almost ready to read. I'm going to do the reading and then we will do some performances. We'll start with the dancers. And then once they finish with their dance performances, the live music will continue and you're invited to sit and enjoy the live music, walk around and enjoy the art. I'll be by my table. If you pre-ordered a book, I'll be there to give it to you. And if you want to purchase a book and get it signed by me, I'll be available to do that. If you just want to get a picture, I'll be available for that. If you want to get a cupcake afterwards, don't miss the cupcakes. And yeah, so I'm going to get into the reading. And I'd like to preface, if you are someone who doesn't like to sit still for a long time, I encourage you to fidget. There are coloring pages. If you want to color in while I'm reading, you can get up and look at the art more closely if you want. I just ask that you be respectful and keep your voices down. Okay, so Michael set up the Prestons. It's a radical Regency family, good people trying to do the right thing in a complex world while falling in love. I often refer to them as having set up a Regency-era commune because they've turned their estate into a safe haven where anyone is welcome and everyone who lives and works there shares in the profits. And so each book is about a different sibling who has their own ideas and convictions. They have to reckon with their family reputation, and they have to figure out what they want as they fall in love. So in the previous book, The Miss Without a Mister, the youngest daughter, Caroline, wants to marry her best friend, Eddie Chow, who is working class. And because they're so radical, everyone kind of assumes that's going to be fine, and they're really surprised when Lord Martin Preston, says that she can't marry Eddie because they're different classes. A whole book happens. Spoiler alert, happily ever after. But now in The Widower Without a Will, it's Lord Martin Preston's story, and he is reckoning with that moment, and he is trying to put his family back together. Enter Martha Bellamy, the rector's widow, who needs a place to stay. She has some wounds of her own, and it turns out the best way to heal is by falling in love. So the theme I'm going to read today focuses on the family drama. Caroline and Eddie are now happily married, and they are visiting for Sunday dinner, and Martin is determined to be on his best behavior. On Sunday, Caroline came for a midday dinner. Martin had gone over the menu with Mrs. Chow on Friday, and again Saturday afternoon, to make sure they were serving Caroline's favorites. Mrs. Chow humored him, as she always did. They had known each other since she and her husband showed up in Martin's garden, begging for help after being turned out by his neighbor on account of her expecting a baby. That had been his impetus for turning Northfield Hall into an estate that welcomed anyone who needed safe haven. Since then, Mrs. Chow had been Lolly's maid, nurse to his children, and for the last couple of decades, housekeeper. Now, she was Caroline's mother-in-law, too, which meant that when Caroline and Eddie arrived at noontime in their rickety gig, Martin went out of his way to invite Mrs. Chow and her husband to join them at the table. "Please, you are family," he insisted, with all the grace he would show to the king himself. "No, thank you, we couldn't," Mrs. Chow replied, as she always did. "Please, Mama Chow," Caroline said, using the new name she had invented for the woman she had known since birth. "Eddie and I should like to spend time with you and Father Chow, too. Come visit us after them. We are minding the little ones today." "Oh, but bring them along. What family is not entertained by its littlest members?" Clapping her hands, Caroline looked at Martin with equal parts appeal and accusation. "You would welcome my nephew and niece at the table, wouldn't you, Papa?" The children, Spencer's offspring, were hardly old enough for company, But Martin dutifully and sincerely answered, "Of course, please, Mrs. Chow, do join us." But she shook her head. "Perhaps another time. Today," she looked pointedly at Mrs. Bellamy, "you have a guest." Martin, of course, had not forgotten Mrs. Bellamy, not even for an instant. She stood in a little corner of the foyer as if she thought that would make her invisible, a friendly expression pasted to her lips in case anyone should look over. Martin wondered what she thought of the exchange. Did she see it for the farce it was, one in which everyone except for Caroline already knew the outcome? Or did she, like Caro, think he was failing to apply himself hard enough to make Mr. and Mrs. Chow feel part of his family? "We'll see you after the meal," Eddie said, putting one arm around Caro's shoulders and bowing his head to his mother. "Hopefully before little Mary's nap." It was not that Martin did not like having Mr. and Mrs. Chow at the family table. He had hosted them in London when Eddie had finished his apprenticeship, in the same dining room where he lobbied William Wilberforce. But everyone had their routines at Northfield Hall. Surely the Chows would feel as strange sitting in the dining room as Martin would if he decided to sup in their cottage. He was not saying it was right, as Caroline seemed to think, only that it was comfortable, and they did not need to fight nature on this particular subject. The matter settled, they moved into the dining room. They all sat at one end, Martin at the head of the table with Caroline and Eddie on his right, and Mrs. Bellamy on his left. The weather had once again turned cool, so a fire burned in the hearth, and the windows remained shut against the drizzling rain. Despite the size of the room, the table stretched onwards to seat 16 people, with space for footmen to bustle around serving dish after dish. Martin felt a little suffocated. He shook off the feeling. How lucky he was that Caroline and Eddie had traveled 5 miles to spend an afternoon with him. He would make the most of this precious time with his daughter. "Oh, Mrs. Bellamy," Carol began, "I have a letter for you from Mr. Seabright." Mrs. Bellamy accepted the letter with that faux friendly look. "How was service this morning? Have you had a chance to meet Mrs. Seabright?" The church was quite full. I imagine everyone was eager to find out what kind of service Mr. Seabright would give. As to Mrs. Seabright, we had a brief conversation about the school, but there is much more to discuss. Wanting to avoid awkwardness around the fact that neither he nor Caroline regularly attended Sunday services, Martin said, "I have heard from Mrs. Bellamy that you are a most active hostess in Thatcham, Carol. Have you any upcoming fêtes planned?" "This is not London society, Papa. I am not hosting fêtes." Her tone hovered between belligerent and rude. But he was not the father who could scold her anymore. He had to be grateful that she was gracing him with her company. Still, his hackles rose, and in defense of Mrs. Bellamy, too. Mrs. Bellamy said kindly, "Perhaps I used the wrong word, sir, having no experience of London myself. What would you call your spring event, Mrs. Chow? A gathering?" Caroline had the grace to look a little embarrassed that her vitriol had landed on poor Mrs. Bellamy instead of Martin. "Yes, I suppose so. After all, there was neither dancing nor music. We were congratulating each other on surviving the winter, as well as raising money to send Daniel Cropper to Edinburgh for medical school." Martin resented her use of "we." Was he not a part of Thatcham, at least enough to be invited to a spring gathering? "I should have been happy to make a contribution. You were in London." He could still have sent money. He would have happily sent money, if only she had asked. "Uncle Malby collected a contribution from Northfield," Caroline added, "so do not worry that anyone thinks you have shirked your duty." As if all that mattered to him was the appearance of benevolence. Or as if all that mattered from the transaction was that the money was exchanged, whether Martin knew about it or not. He swallowed back his objection. "Then I shall thank Uncle Malby when next I call on him." They all seemed to mutually recognize a safe topic. Eddie said, "We stopped in on him this morning, and he was looking well, all things considered." "Such a kind man," Mrs. Bellamy added. "He and my late husband enjoyed several long discussions about faith and theology." Carol smiled. "No doubt that is why he and Papa are so well suited. They both like to debate things to death." Martin wanted to add something to this turn of conversation, but when he opened his mouth to call Malby his best friend, the words died in his throat. It was too much like eulogizing the man, and Martin still clung to the hope that he would never have to do that. Clearing his throat, tucking back all the emotion that threatened to emerge, Martin asked Caroline, "And how are you feeling these days?" She was several months into her first pregnancy, with the baby expected in the winter. I feel fine, Papa. This time her tone bordered on fond. Eddie sees to my every need. Eddie's hands covered hers as she said it, and they exchanged a small, secret smile. That was one thing Martin had never doubted. Eddie was, and had always been, devoted to Caroline. Still, it was strange to imagine his grandchildren growing up as the children of a glazier instead of peers of the realm. I have invited Sophia and John to spend the winter here, Martin said, so that John may be at your disposal as the time nears. John Anderson, who was married to Martin's daughter Sophia, was one of the most coveted accoucheurs in Britain. Accoucheur is a Regency midwife. They needn't come on my behalf. Midwife Brimble always did right by Ellen, and I'm sure she'll do right by me. Martin wondered if Carol would reply so stubbornly if Sophia had been the one to suggest it, not him. Why not make use of both the midwife and the accoucheur? Surely it cannot hurt to have two experts in the room with you. All the women of Thatcham are happy with midwife Brimble. Why should I require an accoucheur when none of them do? Martin knew he should not argue back, but when Caroline got this stubborn, he always seemed to respond by digging in his own heels. Luckily, Eddie interrupted before Martin could make it worse. If John is here anyhow, monkey, it couldn't hurt to have his advice. After all, just remember how the fever took Mrs. Griswick when her baby came in breach. I'm much younger than Mrs. Griswick, and I'm perfectly healthy so far. Besides, we can hardly pay John's fee. This time, Mrs. Bellamy cut in before either Martin or Eddie could make it worse. It's always different for every woman and with every baby. No need to worry about it until the time comes, I like to say. Not quite smiling, she said directly to Carol, I would trust midwife Brimble with my life. Caroline's eyes suddenly shone with tears, surprising Martin. She brushed them away, cleared her throat, and changed the subject. Is there any news from Benjamin, Papa? Last I heard you invited him to spend the winter here, too. When she said it like that, it sounded as if Martin were begging each of his children to keep him company until Parliament reconvened. With Uncle Malby retired, I should prefer to prepare Benjamin for Northfield Hall than hire a new steward. After all, my life can only last so much longer. Here he paused, waiting for Caroline to object that of course he would live forever. She only knocked on the tabletop, superstitiously warding off bad spirits as she bit into another forkful of mutton. Martin had no choice but to continue. I haven't heard back from him yet, however. Perhaps his reply will be to show up in person, preferably with Lydia and the boys, too. Caroline nodded. It takes a long time for a letter to reach Galway, after all. What a joy it would be for you to have so many of your children at home, Mrs. Bellamy said. This time, nothing about her comment felt compelled from politeness. Her smile for Martin was as genuine as her happiness for him. Martin grinned back, even though he felt every emotion other than joy as he tried to wrangle his children back into his orbit. He knew he needn't explain that to Mrs. Bellamy. She understood, without him saying, that these relationships with his children who were no longer children were too complicated. Just as he knew that as painful as they were at times, they were far less painful than the tragedies she had endured. It would be a joy, he agreed. He turned his smile on to Caroline. I am grateful that at least one of you has remained nearby so that I need not always beg for visits. But this, apparently, was the wrong thing to say. Anger flashed through Carol's eyes before she could hide it by looking down at her plate. Perhaps it was too much of a reminder that he had at first tried to push her away so that she would not end up living in a cottage at Northfield Hall married to Eddie. Martin had long since apologized for that, and Caroline said she forgave him. But she certainly hadn't forgotten. Speaking of letters, she said, I have been corresponding with Mr. Muddy, who of late organized the Owenite community at Spa Fields. Their aims are much like yours, Papa, of changing our economy to value labor over money. However, instead of the whole community kowtowing to an aristocratic benefactor, they are made up of working-class men and women who share their labor. Martin had, of course, been closely following the Spa Fields group, who called themselves the Cooperative and Economical Society. He, too, corresponded with Mr. Muddy, as well as Robert Owen himself, the man inspiring labor-based communities as a solution to poverty. But the way Caroline said it, the words she used, made it clear she meant this to start an argument. An argument Martin should steer clear of, since it would only drive her further from him, instead of proving that he was, in fact, worthy of her trust. But he couldn't help himself. Kowtow? I do not believe I have ever asked a single person to kowtow to me. It was a singular word, one printed by observers of the Chinese court, and not one that Martin considered favorable. It conjured images of blind obedience, of emperors banishing courtiers for not bowing deeply enough. It was exactly the kind of accusation Caroline would levy against him, as if his expectation that she marry someone of her own class had proven that he was, in fact, the devil incarnate. Neither do you tell them not to. Did I not just invite Mrs. Chow to dine with us? Find me one other baron who would do so, whether he is related to her by marriage or not. Yet she said no because she finds it uncomfortable. After all these years, she still calls you Lord Preston. It is my title. If you truly do not want people to kowtow, you would do as the Quakers do and instruct us to ignore your title. I did not realize that on top of everything else, you now expect me to become a Quaker. I apologize, Caroline, but as I have sworn to uphold the 39 Articles of the Church of England, I'm afraid I cannot make that conversion just for you. I am asking nothing of you, Papa. I depend upon you for nothing. And there it was, the ugly truth that always hovered between them. Caroline was happily married to Eddie now, but not because Martin had enabled it. No, she lived in Thatcham and hosted her gatherings and expected a baby because she had been headstrong and her siblings had supported her. She had never even asked Martin for her dowry, and because of that, Martin did not dare expect anything from her. He had to hope she would continue to come to Sunday dinners every now and then, and he had to be on his best behavior lest she decide he was not worth introducing her children to. He was the father who was neither disowned nor loved. What would Lolly think if she could visit him now? What did Mrs. Bellamy think, trapped at the dinner table as they hurled feral emotions at each other? Eddie put his hand over Caroline's again, and she let out an angry exhale. I'm overexcited. I had better lie down for a little. Martin, too, tried to dismiss his hurt and reply like the father he wanted to be. The beds are all made upstairs. Rest for as long as you need. You and Eddie can both spend the night, if necessary. But Caroline, already rising from her chair, shook her head. I'll go rest at Mr. and Mrs. Chow's. I can sit in their rocker chair and enjoy the children while I recover my spirits. Martin stood out of good manners. Jacques, who of course had heard the whole exchange, waited at the entryway with Caroline's cloak. Eddie bowed his head, kowtowed to Martin. I'm sorry things got unpleasant. We'll see you soon. And then they were gone, their meals half eaten. Martin looked at Mrs. Bellamy, tried to find some apology or excuse, and found all he could do was let his hands tremble against the table. So that's The Widow Without a Will. And now to help me celebrate, we have some musical guests. We're going to need to do a little bit of a set transition, so please bear with us as we get the dancers set up and the musicians up here. And then there will be the second part of the performance.
What would Mrs. Bellamy think? What would she?
So, bunch of brushes.
How are we going to start? Who's going to shoot the kid? Because you know what the cue is. Whatever you do, something like that. See?
A shoe change happening. I'll just tell you a little bit. That was some freestyle dancing by Arlie R, Trey Shade, and Classic Gorilla. Music from Grand Picnic. And so by freestyle, I mean these people have never rehearsed together. And so Arlie and Trey and Classic were completely improvising just then, and they're going to continue to completely improvise for us. And Arlie's doing tap dance, and Trey and Classic are doing what I call hip hop, but I think there are more specific words for it. I know Classic does flexing. Okay. And this, I think, I don't know, but I think it might be the first time in the history of humanity that we have tap dance and hip hop and classic folk English music together. So I'm calling it a historic moment.
Yeah.
And I really love it because, of course, I'm writing historical romance, and we often think historical romance is rooted in history and that it's trying to be historically accurate. And while that's true, it is also always rooted in whatever the author is bringing from their modern life, and is often combining our modern culture with what we see in history. And so I love to see the blend of modern and tradition here. Are we ready to go? All right, I'll put the microphone away again.
Just cue us out when you want us to go out.
Okay. I give you the.
Yeah, something. We'll be watching. No, I can't take my eyes off.
Thank you so much. Once again, that was Arlie on top, Trey, and Classic. Okay. Yeah, so we're going to continue with the live music. You're welcome to stay, sit, watch the live music. You're welcome to get up, look around, get a cupcake, get another drink. I'll come stand by my table. If you pre-ordered a book, I have it ready for you. And yes, thank you so much. I do want to explicitly thank Arlie because she's my tap dance teacher. I said, Arlie, will you tap dance for me? And she said yes, but also I have all these amazing friends that I want to invite to come dance with me. And so she's really the mastermind behind this cool performance.
I want to say thank you to our beautiful author too, because she has created an amazing community space of artistry. and her wonderful husband, Michael, of course. So the two of them told somebody say, hey, we're gonna have a space, there's gonna be art, there's gonna be books, it's gonna be comfortable, there's gonna be awesome musicians, you can bring your friends, there's gonna be great people, and you're gonna get to know each other right on a board at the front to share information. I feel like it's very rare actually to get that kind of invitation where really everybody is welcome. So thank you and congratulations.
That's good. And thanks everyone for coming out. Let's party. And thank you to the Grand Picnic for performing. We got Michael Gorin, Sam Zygmundievich, and Jody Crusoe.
Close enough.
Okay. And you have an album on Spotify. All right, make sure it's right.
Thanks, guys.
Somebody say something, right? Prince William.